Hello everyone, and welcome to the Mathematical Functions lecture. In this lecture, you're going to learn where you can find various mathematical functions available in PostgreSQL, and then we're going to see some basic examples. Keep in mind, most of the examples we're going to learn about will be available in whatever SQL engine you're using, but in the documentation, you may be alerted to some specific PostgreSQL functions. Now, SQL comes with a lot of mathematical operators built in that are very useful for numeric column types. You can explore all of them in the documentation you can find at this link, or you can just Google search PostgreSQL plus math, and this will be the first link that pops up. So you can go ahead and go to this link, or just Google search for PostgreSQL plus math, and this will be the first hit. So let's go ahead and explore the documentation, and then we'll see some examples in pgadmin of how to actually use these mathematical operations and functions. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the documentation now. Okay, so here we are at the documentation, and something I want you to note is that there are a ton of mathematical functions and operators, way more than we have time to go over in this course, and they're really outside the scope of the course, a lot of them, such as like cosine or sine, and they're really not useful given our data set, but in case you do need them, here's the documentation link so you can check them out. Again, it's just at postgresql.org/docs/ and in this case I'm looking at the latest version, 9.5, /static/functions-math.html. Or again, you can just Google search PostgreSQL plus math, and this will be the link that shows up. So, we have basic mathematical operators available to us, such as plus, minus, multiplication, and basically anything else you can think of, such as square roots, cube roots, factorials, etc. So if you have numeric column types and you want to do mathematical operations on them, you can with the use of these operators. And there's examples here as well as results. Then there's also basic mathematical functions such as absolute values, taking the ceiling of a number, meaning it takes the smallest integer not less than the argument. So here's an example of how you can use it. There's degrees, exponentials, logarithmic operations, pi, power operations, rounding operations. We've actually already seen this one, remember, when we had to round numbers. Okay, and there's a ton of them here that you can go through if you need them. There's also random operations that you can use to fill out random values or select random values. And there's also trigonometric functions such as arcsine, inverse sine, etc. Okay, so let's go ahead and explore a few of the more useful ones, and then let's go ahead and hop to pgadmin to see that. I'm going to go ahead and hop to pgadmin now, and we'll explore a few of these useful mathematical functions and operators. Okay, so I went ahead and opened up a SQL editor, and what I'm going to do now is just explore a table and what kind of operations we can do on it. So I'm going to say select everything from the payment table since I know there's payment numbers there. Okay, so here we have the payment table. We have a payment ID, customer ID, staff ID, rental ID, amount, and a payment date. So just an example of how you can use the basic operators, such as like a plus or minus or division. Let's say we wanted to make a new ID for a specific event, and that ID was going to be defined by the customer ID and the rental ID. So that specific event could have an ID. In this case, we already have a payment ID as that specific event. But let's say we wanted to make one. How could we do that? We could just say, take the customer ID, add it to the rental ID, and that will be that event. Now, you may have repetitive events in this manner, but this is just a very basic example of how you could use an addition argument here, or addition operator. I could say something like select customer ID plus, in this case, rental ID, and we'll say let's go ahead and define this as a new ID. And we'll go ahead and select that from payment. Now if I run this, we'll get this new ID, which is an integer. So we have this new ID for all the events of the payments. So we just basically took the customer ID column and added the rental ID column. We could also multiply them together, and it'll do the mathematical operation multiplication. We can subtract them, we can divide them, etc. So here's the division. In this case, notice how division by itself produced all zeros here. If we take a look at the documentation, just this division symbol by itself will be integer division that truncates the result. So this is happening because if we go ahead and change this to a comma, Basically, everything's being rounded down to 0 because we have this small 3-digit integer being divided by this larger 4-digit integer. If we went ahead and reversed it, so we say rental ID divided by customer ID, and ran that, let me put an R in there, then we start getting these actual new ID results that make sense. Okay, so those are the basics of the mathematical operators. Let's go ahead and show you the basics of a mathematical function. So if we go ahead and say select, we'll go ahead and say AVG for the average amount from payments. If we go ahead and run that, we get this average amount, so it's $4.20 something cents. Just as a reminder, you could do something like round, which is a mathematical operation, and tag or insert whatever column or query you're putting into round, and then run that, and it'll round it for you. Remember, we've actually already seen this because we can add a second argument, which will be how many decimal places after the 0 we want to round to. So in this case, I'm rounding to 2 places after the decimal. Okay, so again, you can explore the documentation yourself if you're ever finding the need to perform a mathematical function. This lecture's main purpose is just to show you that they're available for you if you ever find yourself needing them. Okay, with that being said, that's it for this lecture. In the next lecture, we're going to go ahead and explore a couple more advanced features of SQL. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you there.